Hello everyone, today we're going to take a look at the Mobula6 HDZero and we're going to try to improve it. For those that may have missed the original review video, I will link that down in the video description, as well as places you might be able to get this. I think still at the time of this recording, it's only from Banggood, AliExpress, and Makerfire have these, I believe. But I'll find shops and I'll link them down below. If you have a shop and you have this, hit me up on Facebook or whatever messaging you want to use. I'll link your shop too. It's not just about the whole affiliate thing. Yes, I have affiliates as well, but you should buy them where you want to buy them. But back to the topic at hand. I'll spoil the review video just a touch. For me, it felt a little bit lackluster, underperforming. I really wanted more out of it. And I think what they were likely doing with the design was shooting for that 3-minute flight time marker. Now, 3 minutes for me might not be 3 minutes for someone like AK or, some of those super fast Whoop pilots, but for you, it might mean 4 minutes. It really depends on how fast you fly, how many hard, speedy turns you might have, or if you're outside doing big punch outs or stuff like that. So flight time really varies. And really, the changes I made, well, the changes where I'm ending up are relatively simplistic, but there's one change that you can make that will improve this far more, and that is to change out the HDZero connector. We know that these wear down, and because of their connection to the battery isn't as effectively used. So if you switch to BT20 or GNB27, whichever one you want to switch to, you'll get more flight time and more performance. But in this particular case, I wanted to keep it solderless, so pretty simple. And I also think that through all my prop changes, I may have kind of slightly bent a couple of the stems. I had a big problem getting the newbie drone Z props off. So if it seems a little less clear than the original review video, it's probably because I damaged the shaft, maybe all of them. So the first thing I was going to do was just change out the props and see what happens. As I mentioned in my review video, I was thinking about going newbie drone Z props because the Z props are very smooth and they're also very, very light. But a good point was brought up that the Z props can be kind of hard to get if you live outside of the US. So I ended up switching over to the Gemfan, and as you can see there, I've got the tri-bladed Gemfan 31mm props. I did try the quad-bladed, and while that does increase the performance, the flight time came down pretty dramatically compared to the tri-blades. So if you really want that heavy cornering and additional performance, yeah, quad blades will get you there, but you're going to lose a lot of flight time. I think the good payoff is going with tri-blades. And the other change that I made was to use the Blue Jay ESC firmware. Now, there is some risk to flashing your firmware, so, be careful. I used the 0.14 version, and I did 96 kilohertz on the frequency for the motors. Now, I don't tend to do this because it does change how quickly the motors slow down. So if you need to slow down real quick, you'll have to use, you'll have to lean back or use pitch up in order to get the speed decrease that you need, because the props will slow down slower, and that's how you get the additional efficiency. And that's the main reason. I'm not against using it. It's just the flight feel is just a touch different that it makes me want to not use it. Again, back to the risk of flashing ESC firmware, a couple things you can be careful of. Make sure you've got a fully charged battery that you're going to use, and make sure you don't move the USB connection when you're connected and flashing your ESC firmware. The ESC on this is SH50, by the way, as I show you here on the screen. And I mentioned the ESC firmware as risk because say your battery goes flat while you're flashing. That's a bad gig. Or say the USB connector down here is a little bit loose, or your USB connector is just seated loosely. If it wiggles or loses that data connection, that can also cause it to fail, and then you might not be able to recover. So there is some risk. Many of us have flashed many of ESC and never had a problem. Some others have had many problems. So couple little tips on that. As we jump in here to the indoor flight, I did change camera settings as well, and I'll show you that at the end. Unfortunately, I thought the HDZero Nano V2 camera was supposed to come with the settings that I showed back in the review video for the Whoop Light and the Nano camera, but unfortunately this particular one didn't. I'm not sure why that is. Ryan Quillett had found some really nice settings for the camera, so I did change the camera settings according to what I had in the review video and what Ryan Quillett, who does a lot of testing for HDZero, had suggested. And I think I'm flying a bit more aggressively in this segment than I did in my original review video. Now, it's probably because, I want to push things a little bit, or maybe it was just too much coffee on that day. And I'm going to try to follow the same sort of flight types that I did in the review video so you can get an accurate comparison. So I did about 1.5 minutes in that original review video of the Mobula6 HDZero of aggressive, fast, freestyle flight. And then I slowed down and did some close proximity around the kitchen table and some other little things, just trying to hone my fine-tuned proximity skills in. So you're going to find I do about the same here as well. We're also going to have an outside flight that we'll look at. And I think these are probably two changes that are, the ESC firmware I mentioned is risk, but these are two relatively simple changes that we can make in order to get some additional performance, get some additional flight time, and have some additional fun. Now, for many of you, you're saying, oh, I want to see this in a 75mm format with 40mm props. I got you. We're going to be doing that up next. And if you follow the channel, you know that I generally, on my whoops, prefer a 75mm, 40mm propped whoop. That's what I have the majority of my quads to. I've converted most of my 65mm quads into at least a 35mm prop, if not a majority of them are the 40mm prop. So that'll be coming up. We're going to step stone to this. I got to take this apart. Unfortunately, in that video coming up, you'll see the same sort of possibly less sharp than it could be of the HDZero image because of my fussing with the props. Matter of fact, to take those Z props off, I had to get a pair of needle nose out and fold one of the props of the tri-blades just completely down and then pull it off. And I tried for all I was worth on my fingers, but I was only able to get one prop off with my fingers. My fingers got very, very sore. I tried to get the others off, and I couldn't get it done. Now, maybe if I waited a couple hours for the soreness in my fingers to come back around, maybe, but I went ahead and just used a tool, and that may have caused a little bit of a problem. So you can see there, I had a flight time of 2 minutes 53 seconds, which is longer than my original review video, and the battery were in good shape at 3.53 volts. Now we're going to move on to the outside flight. Nope, my battery isn't quite fully charged. Normally, if I have a fresh charge on my battery, I'll see at least 4.18, if not 4.2. I do high volt charge my single cell batteries. So we also get a tour of the changes of the outdoor living space cooking area. You might see some extra furniture around there. I'm not sure if that's actually going to stick around or not because unfortunately close friends of ours, they have relocated to Florida. They actually just left the other day, so they were getting rid of some things and some stuff that wouldn't fit in the pod that is being shipped. They opted to give it to us. I don't know if we accepted it because we actually want it and need it, or if it was more kind of just one of those moments where you take a little piece of your friend and keep it with you. It keeps them fresh in your mind. I'm not certain about that. My wife can be very sentimental. Not that I'm not, but I think she's much more so. So they moved, and we've got some extra furniture. And Chad, our contractor for the construction going on in the outdoor living space, he has been making steady progress. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see the changes because they're detailed changes. He did a lot of scavenging for some stone work that we can put on the outdoor pillars, or outdoor living space pillars, as well as do some wrapping of the exterior of the cook space too. Got the electricians that should be coming back shortly to finish out the electrical, get those heaters and the ceiling fan and all the other stuff tied in. We're going to have some more security cameras out back with motion sensing lights. Just want to make sure that if anybody comes back there to tinker with this space, that we got them on camera, and that if anybody is a pet is in the backyard, that we can get an alert to it potentially, and maybe keep that pet from possibly getting in the pool, although it's largely covered when we're not in it. That was kind of something that I was adamant about, is that we needed to have an auto cover. It's not really auto, but it's mechanized, and we needed to keep it locked up behind a key so that the kids can't use it without getting the key from us, and it's covered most of the time, so we don't have the risk of anyone falling in the pool or getting in the pool on accident, whether it's wildlife or pets or people. So I think the flight time on this flight is going to be about the same. Of course, I have the original review video. You can go watch that if you didn't already to get a better comparison. I do think, if I remember correctly, even though I've watched this flight about a dozen times, I think I come in a little bit low on the battery voltage, and I get a flight time that's very, very comparable. Matter of fact, just a touch more than I did in my original review video, if I remember correctly. I did not write it down. I didn't fly it down low. I've actually had a touch more, like 2 seconds more I could have flown on that. So there we go. Again, if you're interested in the Mobula6 HDZero, I'll have links down in the video description to the various shops. If you have a shop and I haven't linked it, let me know and I will link it down in the video description. What do you think? Did those changes I make increase the performance? Is it more satisfactory to you now? Keep in mind, flight time is a big variable. It really depends upon how you fly. Outdoor, you're generally going to get less flight time out of a whoop than you are inside, because inside we're much more restricted. We can't be as fast as we might want to. We can't do some of the big maneuvers and tricks that we might want to or can outside. Again, I want to reiterate that you can make another improvement by changing out the PH20 connector to BT20 or GNB27. Ryan Quillett has got a video on this stuff as well. You can go check out his video. It gives you a great idea of different samples of flight. The camera settings, let me put those here on screen. This is actually a screenshot from Ryan. I just matched it, and that was what I did in my original review video for the Whoop Light VTX and Nano camera. I'll link Ryan's video down in the video description so you can go watch that. You can see his camera and how it operates in his environment. He does a lot of testing for HDZero. I said that earlier, but I think that's important to note is that if you're interested in HDZero, his channel would be a good one to at the very least subscribe to and visit for those particular HDZero topics that you're interested in. So next up, it might take me a week or so to get to it, but I'm going to be taking all these parts out and putting it in a 75mm frame. Of course, we'll get more flight time because we'll be flying, I generally fly a 450 as far as the battery milliamp hour goes. So we're going to have more battery there, but it's just going to perform better. It just will. But if you like 65mm, because it is super small, I have my preferences. I have certain quads that you shave 5mm off the frame, and I like them better just because that mental thought of having something smaller that I'm flying. So I understand. I'm not criticizing you. I just have a preference for the 75mm format. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, you probably should hit that subscribe button if you want to see the 75mm format. Or frame. I keep saying format because that's just how my brain works, but we're going to be putting it in 75mm frame. Probably should hit that subscribe button. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.